You always edit the little bit out at the start, and then
That's
you
fine.
got the rest, don't you?
Aye. Right, that's us on. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show, and also congratulations for being the first person to be on it.
Yes.
Hopefully not the last. So yeah, I don't really know how to start this. So just why don't you just say obviously your name and where people can watch your runs first of all, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no worries. So, to those that don't know me formally or personally, I'm known as Viper. You can use my normal name if you wish, which is Brad, but we don't go there if you don't want to use it. But you can find me usually over at ViperRaces on Twitch, and on speedrun.com it's Viper UK. I'm just trying to think what else to say apart from that. But yeah, normally my main cliche is or main genre of games that I speedrun, racing games,
Mm-hmm.
usually old ones, but I'm open
Yeah,
to the new games and things like that as well.
that's brilliant. We'll get into that in a minute. Obviously, the racing games, because I feel like that's going to be a big area of discussion. But yeah, I'll link your Twitch and stuff, and I'll link all your socials below in the description so people can check those out. Um, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, what I want to start with is just kind of how you get into speedrunning. What was like? Was there a run that you watched? And kind of when was it? You know, how many years ago?
Yeah, so I mean, it is hard for me to say exactly when I started watching speedruns, but if I put a rough year on it, probably 2011, maybe
2011.
2012, something
Okay.
around there. I remember at the time when I first got into speedruns, it
Mm-hmm.
was either I think it was Adam AK that I mainly watched. He used to do a lot of Grand Theft Auto Vice City speedruns.
Right. Okay.
I just used to love watching him because I was like, oh, he has a British sounding accent
Mm-hmm.
and everything. So I watched him a lot.
Yep.
And then obviously from him, I got into watching a few other people as well. I mean, early days it was all about just watching Adam and just seeing
Mm-hmm.
what he did.
Yeah.
GDQ wasn't really on my radar at the time. I think I maybe tuned in every now and again to see what was
Yeah.
going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like it in terms of where it started, it like I said 2011, 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of progressed through there. Where I first got into speedrunning myself was 2014.
Right. Okay.
Basically, a friend of mine at the time, he said, "Well, why don't you give this speedrunning thing a try? You never know." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? How fast can I? I wonder how fast I can beat the Simpsons hit and run."
Okay.
And I played it for years. It's a fun game, so I thought I'd play it as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next thing was like, right, okay, I played it through, did it for like a few times, and I was like, right, now I'm gonna time it.
Right. Okay.
So then I timed it, see how long it took me. It took me like a little over 2 and a bit hours, I think, to finish. And I was like, nah, I can do better than that if I pass everything first try.
Sorry, mate.
And
Can I just stop you there? The you said obviously you timed it. How did you time it initially? So did you know about live split, or did you just think, oh, did you just do it like old school, like I'll just get a stopwatch or something? Like, what was your kind of method there? Because
so I didn't have a clue what to do in terms of timing. Like I had
right,
no idea about timing methods. So I was originally thinking, oh, you maybe need to use like a stopwatch or something like that. Luckily at the time though, I remember asking Adam
mm-hmm.
on his stream
Right,
that what was the timing software that he used,
yep,
and he used something called W Split, which I haven't used in quite a long time.
yeah, yeah,
But it was I mean it's timing software. It times it. You can split things, and
yep,
so it was like yeah okay I'll use that. So it took me a little bit to get into that.
mm-hmm.
But it was like I said, so I used W Split as my first bit of software. I was streaming originally just streaming Simpson Set and Run casually
Right,
to YouTube and everything like that at the time, and then it was like, oh okay, let's try and do the speed run bit. Through W Split in there, started doing
mm-hmm.
runs. I
Mm-hmm.
only did a few, and then I think I got a 56 or something eventually on console.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that seems pretty good. I think I can leave that there.
Yeah.
So this was like August 2014
Yeah.
at this point. So I'd left that behind at the end of August. I was focusing on other things at the time. I was in college,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
obviously had uni a bit down the line. So for me, it was like speedrunning wasn't really there at that point. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say mainly like that was the start, but
Yeah.
mainly where I got into speedrunning properly
Mm-hmm.
was the following December,
Right.
where
Okay.
for some reason I don't remember why. I think I was just in class in college or uni at the time, and just
Yeah.
thought, what was that thing I used to do? You know, with the timing thing. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I remember, and I ended up stumbling across like my old video again,
All right. Okay.
in my backlog, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I used to do speedrun. I was like, why did I ever stop? I forgot why I stopped in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So immediately I'm like, right, okay, let's have a look. But I don't really want to go back into Simpsons again. Now let's try something completely different.
Uh-huh.
And as I said before, my niche is like racing games. So immediately I'm like, what games I used to play when I was younger? What games was I really good at?
Yeah.
And I ended up coming up with Colin McRae Rally 1 and Colin
Brilliant.
McRae Rally 2,
Good.
Driver, and so on. And yeah, from there, it started with Colin McRae Rally 2 because
Mm-hmm.
that already had a speedrun page.
Right. Okay.
All the other games that I wanted to play, I think Driver had a speedrun page at the time. I was like, I'm never going to try that, never going to attempt it. Mainly because of the fact that I remember how hard it was to finish that game, and I was
Yeah.
like, nope, uh-uh.
Can I just
Um,
sorry? Can I just stop you there? I was laughing a minute ago there because when you said I thought about it in college one day, and I've actually got a really similar story about that. That was actually I was in college one day, and I just remember that was when I first kind of got into speedrunning. I just thought about it one day, and I just thought, oh yeah, what is that? What's that speedrunning thing all about? Because I knew about it, I just never looked at it. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was quite funny, and obviously, like I said, the you mentioned that timer as well. You know, I think it's good for people that are maybe not into speedrunning or want to get into it to hear how it works and to hear that not everyone goes into speedrunning knowing what live split is, how to set it up,
hmm.
because I was very much the same. I mean, I think there was a program called XSplit. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's quite old now. I don't know if anyone uses that now, but live split's kind of the main one. But yeah, I think it's good for people to kind of hear and to know that there's nothing wrong with doing it grassroots, as you say,
Yeah.
because you got to start somewhere. But
Well, that's it.
yeah,
It's, I mean, it's like there was, I think, so back in 2013, 2014, live split wasn't even really a thing in my book. I don't really think it was a big thing until maybe a few years later when everyone
yeah,
used it.
I'm not really sure to be honest. I say I remember XSplit but live split just has so much functionality. I don't remember. I've not done research on this, so I don't know when it came out, but um, that's kind of the one everyone uses now. But
Mm.
you can kind of tell, like if you watch like all the old runs from like 2014, as you say, 2013, 14, you'll notice you can tell it's an older timer or it's not
Yeah.
live split. So,
Well, that's it.
hmm
There was actually one thing that I do remember seeing, and people still do it now,
hmm
which is the websites you can get where you can just put the timer on screen, and
yeah, yeah,
you just record the timer on the
uh-huh.
phone, and then the game as well with the laptop camera. I mean, there's
Yeah,
a variety of ways you can do it. Even people now still do it, like because they're getting into it, or they can't
yeah,
afford the big setups, which is completely fair.
of course, yeah,
It's not exactly cheap to buy a capture card unless you're not really too bothered about quality and you're like, I'll get an easy cap and that'll work. Then that
yeah,
always works as well. But yeah, usually it was a case of either, like you said, X split, W split.
hmm
Eventually, live split came into it, and that was like you said, that's like the main live split running
hmm
component.
yeah,
But yeah, in terms of like I said, in terms of games, it was okay. So it started with The Simpsons. There was like a year break. Then there was
hmm
so for me, I always say 2014 was like a taster for me
yeah, yeah,
for
okay,
speedrunning to get into it.
yeah,
And I think at the time, like I said, I was very busy and I was like, oh, that was pretty fun, but I probably won't do it again. And then a year later, or a year and a bit later, when I was at college, like I said, it was a case of yeah, like what was it that I used to do? And I was like, you know what, I'll get back into this. And a lot of my older runs are still on
Mm-hmm.
I mean, still on SRC, they're still on YouTube.
Yep.
And they still use W split, and I'm like, oh my god, there's W split. I remember that so
Yeah.
much.
I was gonna say
But
actually. So I mean, obviously, I like to think I'm a reasonably competent host. So I did a bit, like I said, I did a bit of research. Looked at your speedrun.com profile. Um, Obviously, everyone knows you for racing games. It's in your name.
hmm
But you've
and
also
as of
ran,
late,
yeah, as of
oh
late,
no.
yeah. Well, maybe not, but you've done loads of games. Like literally, the list is so long. Um, you have done different games, Elmo,
Yeah.
but yeah, you've done like I think you've done Die Hard. I seen you did Reservoir Dogs. What was it about those games? Was it just ones that you, I don't know, was that just like a random? Oh, I wonder what that game would be like, or was there anything that kind of drove
Hmm.
like anything that kind of got you into those?
I'd say so. With Die Hard is an interesting one. So Die Hard was a game that I played when I was younger, and
Right.
I
Okay.
probably shouldn't have been allowed to because it was a 15 plus.
Tell
But
me about it.
we'll
Yeah.
gloss over that.
We'll
We'll
get we'll,
gloss
we'll go
over
in,
that.
we'll go into that in
Everyone's
a different. Yeah, that's a story for
that's
another day.
that's it. Yeah. But I was back when I was a young when I was a kid. I played a lot of different games on the PS1. I remember playing Die Hard a little bit. I played the original Crash Bandicoot and things
Mhm.
like that. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, I kept Die Hard a lot over the years. I never got rid of it. I never sold it,
Right. Okay.
and I always kept it in my collection because I remember the game was distinct. It wasn't the
Hmm.
most highly rated game, but it was very distinct. And the weird
Yep.
thing is that I played Die Hard trilogy without ever watching the Die Hard films. It wasn't until 2010,
Yeah.
2011, I want to say, where I actually got told by my dad, like, you need to watch Die Hard. They are really good films. So I was like, oh, okay. Went back and
Sorry,
watched them,
just
and then
to cut you off again there. Sorry, the Die Hard trilogy you mentioned. Is that a PS1 game?
it is, yeah.
It is.
It
I'm.
did release on PC and Saturn as well, I
Saturn, right?
believe.
The reason I mention it is because you've probably heard of it. There's another game for the PS1 called Alien Trilogy. It might even be by the same devs. Um,
Possibly, yeah.
it's
Fox
very,
Interactive.
yeah. It's like I've actually got a copy of it somewhere. If I had it on me, I'd show it. I can't be arsed like looking for it, right? But I'm wondering if it's the same company because it's. I don't know what Die Hard trilogy is like, but in Alien trilogy, it's like the first three films. Um, Kind of, it's a bit janky. It's an FPS on the PS1, right? So it's
Hmm.
aged like milk, right? But if they did a remaster or something, it would, I think it'd be quite cool. But yeah, I heard the trilogy part there, and I thought, yeah, I just got the wheels going. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was
Hmm.
so with Die Hard trilogy.
Hmm.
So it covers full enough, same as the Alien trilogy. It covers the first three films. However, the way that they did it in that game was
Yep.
the three games are split into three different game styles.
Right. Okay.
So the first one, the first film, so Die Hard, that is a third person, not top down. It's like cameras set a bit up, but behind John. And you
Right.
run
Okay.
around and you can mode out, you kill terrorists and all the rest of it, and
Yep.
obviously save your wife and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
In the second one, it acts as a rail shooter. So it's like the House of
Yeah.
Dead games where the character moves for you and you shoot the
Yep.
bad guys on screen. The third one is a driving one. Now you think the third one is my favorite. It's actually my least favorite.
Right. Okay.
The giant physics for a start. There's a lot of things I could go into and say, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But the trilogy as a whole was quite fun. I got into speedrunning that simply because of the fact that one day I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna play Die Hard. I don't think I'll finish it. I'll just play it through.
Hmm.
Lo and behold, after about an hour and a half of playing it through, I was like, bloody hell, that was well easy. Why am I not speedrunning this? So then obviously I was like, you know what, I'll take it upon myself. I did a speed run.
Yep.
There was no SRC page for it, and then I think up until mid last year, I think it
Hmm.
was about April,
Yep.
May last year. A guy called Steve of War came into my chat and was like, "Oh yeah, He's like, oh, I found someone that's done speedruns of Die Hard."
Hmm.
So immediately got into speedrunning that. The Reservoir Dogs is a bit of a different story. To cut a long story short with that one, I got involved in a community during, I think it was 2019 originally. What's it, 18, 19,
Right.
maybe
Okay.
somewhere around there. So I'm in a community of people which anyone can join called Blind Runners.
Right. Okay.
And in Blind Runners, every week they run a random game that's picked from a database that people have submitted to. So you can
Right.
submit any game you want, preferably any game you'd like to see other people play. And
Mm.
people can say they can vote on out the four that are randomly picked every
Yeah.
week, and then whichever one's picked, you can decide whether you want to run it or not.
Yeah.
And the idea is to basically go as fast as possible without knowing anything about the game. So basically, you're fast playing it,
Right. That's
and
quite
it can
good.
be a fun time and also
Mhm.
difficult as well, depending on the game.
That's quite interesting. I mean, well, when you say blind run, at first my mind went to blindfold.
Yeah,
Um,
same way.
we can go on to that in a moment as well. But yeah, no, blind running is quite a good. Um, that's quite a good idea, really. I mean, I don't know if I take it you've watched Easy Speezy on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty much what he does. You know, he just takes requests from his viewers and he does a run. And I mean, I don't know how many. I think he's quite big now. I mean, when I first heard of Easy Speezy, he had like 300k subs, and then over the year, he's now got like over 2 million, I think. So, yeah, his channel was really blown up at that point. But it's quite a good idea, I think, you know, because I think people just need to like. Um, sometimes people say, "Oh, I need to find a game to speedrun," and it's like the best way to do it is just to play games you like,
Well,
and
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
play games, and then like it gets to a point in some games where you've played it that many times, there's no replay value left, and
Mm.
you go, you know, you think, oh, but well, maybe if I speedrun it, and that's not always the case though. I mean, sometimes you try speedrunning a game and it's crap. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but no, it's quite a good way. But then you do get people that just go into games and say like, I want to speedrun this game, um, even though they probably never played it casually or they've maybe played it once casually, you know. But to each their own, you know. I don't get don't get these people that are kind of gatekeepy in that sense. But again, we can go into that as well. But
No, no. I mean, it's interesting. So through this blind runners community Discord thing,
mm,
and it's been for quite a few years now. I don't participate in every week's race. I used to when we first started it, and I think after a bit, I just kind of did it every now and again.
yeah,
But through that community and through the random games that are picked, I found new games to learn and actually want to run. So
right,
like Reservoir Dogs was one of them. I had the game for years on my original Xbox, and I played it a little bit, and I was like, "Ah, this is rubbish." Turned it off, never played it again.
mm-hmm.
So when it came up, I was like, "Oh, this is too good to pass up. I need to like now. I'm gonna force myself to finish it." And played it through, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was like, "Damn, this game might be broken as hell, but it was fun as hell. It was just so fun and easy to do, and I ended up
Mm-hmm.
submitting to a few marathons and a few events, and I don't know. It was one of them. I mean, there was that, and one of the other ones that I definitely remember a lot
Mm-hmm.
from Blind Runners was Hot Wheels Stunt Track Challenge. I
Yeah,
remember doing it for ESA during the online events, and I've not. I don't think I've done it too much recently with events, but that was a game that I specifically picked up during the Blind Runners stuff,
mm-hmm.
and like I said, it's on my back catalogue, my speedrun CV thing,
Yeah,
and I like pulling it out every now and again, just playing it and doing speedruns of it.
mm-hmm.
Not going for PBs, but casually playing it, I found it a lot of fun, and I quite enjoyed doing runs of it. It has racing, it has stunts and things like that. There's
Right,
points on offer.
mm-hmm.
There was a lot to it. There was a
Yeah,
lot of different games in that Blind Runners thing, but that, like I said, it was either for me with speedrun, it's either been through Blind Runners that I've done,
mm-hmm.
through childhood memory
Yeah,
or childhood memories, or a case of, well, that looks like really bad or fun. Let's try that, and then played it.
yeah.
See Elmo, but anyway.
Elmo, yeah. For those that, yeah, so just for those that maybe don't know what we're talking about when we say Elmo, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say watch the highlights from the most recent UK speedrunner gathering and watch Viper's run of Elmo's letter adventure. Is that what it's called?
Elmo's Letter Adventure.
Letter
Yeah, I've
Adventure.
actually got the. I've managed to get the video up on my YouTube channel, which you
Yeah,
can find
I'll link
at
that as well.
ViperRacing.
Yeah, I'll link that as well because
Um,
it's just.
that's actually a good segue. Thinking of it, like
Mm,
with events and things with marathons.
mm,
So one of the key things with speedrun, I suppose this is kind of getting into like the next question,
mm,
is the fact of when it comes to doing speedrunning,
mm,
one of the main things that I found helps me a lot and also gets me learning games and really pushes me at times
mm,
is doing events and marathons because seeing what everyone else can do is always interesting, seeing what people are
yeah.
good at and what, and their specialty. It can sometimes push you a certain way. Like, for example, I'm a racing guy, I
Mm,
like racing games and I'm not keen on stuff like Mario Kart. I like seeing other people push games like Mario Kart to the limit, but for
mm.
me, it's not my
It's not
bag.
your kind of
But
game, yeah.
then there'll be something like Elmo or the Flash games block that we had recently, UKSG,
Oh
where I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, them games look like a hell of a lot of fun.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, it's a variety of games. Marathons tend to throw up near enough anything and everything, provided it's not against Twitch's terms of service.
yeah.
And it's always that's another good way of getting into doing runs of games. I mean, that's another
Yeah.
way I've got into it.
I was just about to say actually. So imagine, you, me, and probably most people watching would say, speedrun marathons were one of the main reasons why they get into runs because they look up runs of their favorite games, and usually the top result is games done quick.
Mm.
Probably well ESA now. ESA is getting bigger, but yeah, games done quick. ESA. So they'll see it on that, and then when you start getting into speedrunning, the next thing is the draw. You want to be at the event. You want to run. You want to have your run seen by, you know, hundreds or thousands of people, whatever. And you want to obviously meet other kind of like-minded people. I mean, when I first got into it, so when I first went to marathons, you know yourself. The first marathon I went to was UKSG, UK Speedrunner Gathering, and again I'll link that in the description for anyone that doesn't know. Um, but my motivation for going to that was pretty much, I want to get this run out there. Um, and I was really getting into streaming at the time as well. So yeah, maybe a bit shameless to say that I'd have all these people seeing it, but in my opinion, I would say, I'm just going to be honest with this. I'd say you're lying if you say, oh, I don't do it for the, for people watching. You absolutely do. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like you go to show other people you run. Absolutely. I say I submitted Postal 2, and I was so surprised at the amount of people that were like, that was great, or that was, oh, we've never seen anything like that before. So
What's it? Yeah, it's like that was gory. Wow, okay.
whoa, God, what's this? But yeah, it's I would say to anyone watching, if you're thinking about going for a marathon and you're maybe a bit nervous or unsure, just go for it.
Yeah, I think one of the main pieces of advice I could probably say again, it probably echoes that, which
Mm-hmm.
is speedrun events seem like it's the scariest thing in the world to a lot of people because the fact that it's like, I've got to travel somewhere and, there's all these people there and am I going to
Yeah,
make friends? Am I going to get on with anybody? There's all these questions that get thrown out.
yeah,
And that's perfectly reasonable. That's
yeah.
understandable. But realistically, once you get to the main door, I mean, for me personally, with every new event I've been to, I've usually kept in contact with the head organizer. So in the case of UKSG, it's Paul Lister.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of maybe some like film runs, it'll be Javelin and so on.
Yeah,
And I've usually kept in contact with them and asked them questions like, how do I get here? How do I get to the
yeah.
event? Where's like the best place for hotels? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, and I say usually, this is pretty much everyone that I know in terms of like all head organizers has been like, yeah, I can help. I can help you guide you around. I mean, if needs be as well, if you are very scared and quite a shy person,
Mm-hmm.
the main thing that I would highly recommend is to inform the main like organizer or one of the main
Yeah.
organizers of that and say, look, I've never been to the event before. Would it be all right if you showed me around? And either they or they will assign someone to you to show you
Hmm.
around and go, right, this is where we hang out. This is where the casual bit is. That's the stream.
Yeah.
Like this is where you can have food if you want to chill out and things like that. And then.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think with also with speedrunning, you know yourself. There's a million and one personalities.
Mm,
It's not just you go to a speedrun event, you think everyone's going to be, you might think everyone's going to be kind of quiet, reserved, a bit shy.
yeah,
That is anything but, that's anything but the truth. I mean, like when I went to my first UKSG in person, I was kind of expecting that, but also not really because I'd spoken to you, I'd spoken to Apache, I'd spoken to a few other people, and as I say, not every you do get people like that, of course you do,
mm,
but when you've got people like that at the event that that even better if they're from the area as you say, like Pollister, from Glasgow, obviously they can kind of point you out, they can tell you where to go, and there's at the end of the day, their staff, that's their job, they're kind of running the event. So, but yeah, as I say, I would say to anyone going to an event, don't be nervous. You're not going to be like, you're among like-minded people. The only thing I
but
would say, like, is
go
if
on.
you're doing the run, it's totally okay to be nervous as well. I mean, I've ran at a couple of events now, and every time I'm always nervous before the run. So
Yeah, so
it's,
man.
yeah, it's not. I mean, you've done way more than me, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way. So
200 events and still friggin' nervous. I
yeah,
still, you still get stage fright. I don't think it ever goes
it
away.
never goes away, but it's
Um,
like that for any profession. Whether you're like, you could be like, I'm sure George Carlin, the comedian, I'm sure he probably got really nervous before going on stage, but um, it's just
well,
something that
that's it.
you work through.
That's the other thing as well is that in terms of something that's another thing to keep in mind with marathon events as well is the fact that when you go to all these events, say for example, I mean I run racing games, but
Yeah.
obviously in the case of yourself, or you'll obviously run like Postal or something like that,
Hmm.
and it might be the complete opposite to whatever I play. But the thing is, and this goes for like I said, near enough anybody, is the fact that when you go to them events, what you play is what you play, but it doesn't really take center stage. It's a case of like, yeah, okay, I might talk a little bit about racing games to you.
Hmm.
I might say about this or that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we might end up, I mean, in the case of the last UKSG, we end up joking about something completely different, which was still game. Something
Yeah.
that was completely not game related. It would happen to be about,
Yeah.
comedy and that sort of thing. You can talk to people on a normal level
Of course.
and
Yeah.
they'll talk to you back. I mean, yeah, granted, gaming will probably be the main center point of
Yeah.
talking. But if everyone spoke about their own games, then it would kind of feel probably self-centered, and nobody would probably speak to one another. Whereas
Yeah.
if you listen to what everyone says and
Mhm.
talk, and and
It's a
it's a
good
two-way
point.
street basically.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like you go to events, you've got to kind of like obviously you're all there for the same thing. You're all speedrunners or you like speedrunning. But you've got to obviously when you're talking to people, you've got to talk to them like people, not
Yeah,
just speedrunners. So, and that kind of helps you. That really helps get through that any kind of nerves you might have. It's all well and good. You can start with, oh yeah, what are you running? Or are you running anything? What are you doing? Um, but there will come a point where you kind of talk about other shit as well. So,
that's it. Yeah,
but yeah.
exactly.
Sorry, I just want to move on a bit if that's okay.
Hmm.
So kind of moving away from speedrunning slightly. So it's the obviously you're a big fan of racing games, F1 outside of speedrunning. So where did that kind of start? Was that just always a thing? Like was that when you were a kid?
Well, as
Um,
in racing as a hobby, as in cars and stuff, or
Cars
racing
racing, yeah,
games.
all of that, yeah. I mean, because I imagine
Um,
racing games probably came at a later point, but yeah, where did all that kind of
uh,
come from?
I'd say, to be honest, I'd say racing games and cars it basically hit me at the same time. So again, this is just like casual gaming. Is
Hmm.
when I was very, very young. I think maybe 3 or 4 years old. My mum and dad got me a PlayStation 1.
Right.
and they got me Driver, they got me Colin McRae Rally, hence why I've got such an obsession with Colin
Yeah.
McRae Rally, and Colin McRae as well.
Yeah.
And I got took to a lot of car shows when I was younger. There was one that was
Right.
on every January. It's still going now,
Brilliant.
called
Okay.
Odd Sport International. And we used to go every year. I used to absolutely love it. It was at the
Right.
NEC in Birmingham. I think it's still there now.
Brilliant.
And it was, for me, I don't know what it was exactly. I can't say what caused the spark for cars.
Mm-hmm.
There must have been something in my head where, because I'd been playing racing games for so long, like even though it was on like three or four,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been playing them on a little virtual screen, seeing these massive things like, whoa, that's a, I mean, at the time I didn't know what any cars, but
Yeah.
seeing like an actual Corvette in person or
Yeah.
an old Dodge Viper or something like that, my mind was like, wow, like, what the heck am I looking at? This is unbelievable. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But then you throw in the fact of the like so the racing games and the cars came in around the same time, about 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 years old. I
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of stories to tell about cars, but I'm not going to fill this with that part. But like for example, my dad has gone through a variety of cars. My dad loves cars. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's more of a generation thing. Like my
Mm-hmm.
dad, my granddad, my dad, and now me. And then in terms of like the racing games, they just came because they were like the main thing that I had on the PlayStation 1.
Right.
So that's how I got into racing games. Motorsport, on the other hand, was completely different
Mm-hmm.
because, bizarrely enough, for someone that plays rally games, likes Colin McRae and the Colin McRae rally games, rallying was never my strongest passion.
Right.
So the real life rallying. It's never been my strongest passion, and I've never really took too big of an interest with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched several season reviews from 20 years ago and 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, ah, yes, back when Colin McRae Rally was actually a real thing and it wasn't just on a games console.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really get into motorsport properly, and I remember my granddad was obsessed with Formula One because I
Mm-hmm.
remember he always used to say that bloody Schumacher's done it again and he keeps winning. So he was a big F1 fan.
Mm-hmm.
I got into F1, Formula One anyway, in 2012. Watched
Right.
it more or less ever since. A lot less so these days, but I
Yeah.
still watch it every now and again.
Do you?
Um,
So sorry. Who's your kind of favorite racer right now? Do you have a favorite F1 racer, or do you just kind of watch it for the
uh,
event?
I mean, it's I mean, it's a variety of drivers. I mean, I've always been a Lewis Hamilton fan. Not a die-hard, I'm going to die on this hill sort of fan.
Yeah.
But I've always been a fan of him and always supported him and backed him.
Yeah.
And it's obviously I've had other guys that I've been introduced to the last couple of years that I've supported, like Lando Norris, who's also British, Charles Leclerc, who's Monegasque,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. There's been like quite a few different drivers. Like Lewis is my main one, but
Yeah.
I spot a variety of other ones as well.
Good. Good.
Um, and then
Um.
British touring cars as well. That was my other motorsport. I got into
Mhm.
that about 5 years ago.
Right. Okay.
Friend of mine, who's actually several friends of mine, that are all massive British touring car fans. Like they've been watching it for 20 or so
Oh
years.
wow.
Was like, you should definitely try and watch it because unlike F1, these guys can actually hit each other, and can take paint off, and it's way more exciting. You should definitely give it a try.
Yeah.
Anyway, fast forward 5 years, and I've been to quite a few touring car meetings, most notably
Mhm.
at Alton Park and Donington, because
Right.
they're my nearest racetracks,
Yeah.
about an hour and a half each,
Mhm.
to get to. And yeah, it's just kind of escalated from there. I've tried to go out since then, the last 5 years. Obviously, we had
Mhm.
COVID as well,
Yeah.
but
Of
I've tried
course.
to go out
Mhm.
and get to tracks and watch, whether it be touring cars, but also last year I'm not a bike lover, but I did manage to get to the World Superbike Championship last year, so that was a new experience.
Right.
And I'm looking at doing the British Superbikes with a friend of mine, mainly because my mate's into it. So I'm going for not. I'm not going because for the sake of his benefit, but the
Mhm.
case of he's told me watch it once. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But it's definitely an experience. So I'm giving
Yeah,
things like as a one-off, and then
yeah,
if I
give them a
don't like them, I
chance.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you ever? I don't. Well, I don't know if you've already been, but would you ever go to the Isle of Man TT if you've never done it?
I've been told to go to that a few
Yeah.
times by various people. My dad wants to go. He's very encourageable about it. I said I'd consider it. I'm not sure, but then
Hmm.
again, we do have family members in the Isle of Man, so
Right. Okay. Well, that's
in that
yeah.
regard, it'd be like killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe one day, but I don't know when that would be. But
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
mean that's good. I was just going to say there. Obviously, you mentioned we kind of briefly spoke about UKSG. Um, Another runner who I was actually chatting to prior to this call shall not be named. He says talk about ESA. So, yeah, obviously ESA. Um, you know, feel free to say what it is to those that don't know. And obviously there is an ESA event coming up. So, feel free to tell everyone what you're kind of doing there. And yeah, just on you go. Floor
Yeah,
is yours.
yeah. So basically, to sum it up, so ESA is the European Speedrunners Assembly. I think I got that right. And it takes place twice a year.
Hmm.
There's an event in winter and an event in summer.
Hmm.
Usually February for winter, end of July
Yeah.
for summer. And it runs a full week long. It's about I think it's 8 days, 7 or 8 days
Sound
long,
about right.
something
Yeah.
around there.
Hmm.
The streams, there's two streams, and they run 24/7, near enough. And in terms, it's see, ESA is an experience. It's hard to explain, but to
Hmm.
sum it up, is that with it, the title being in the name, it's European,
Yeah.
but it's also a case of it doesn't mean that it's limited to anyone
To
from Europe.
Europeans. Yeah.
So you can go
Excuse me.
if you are from the US or from
Hmm.
Canada. There's been people that come over from Australia, Singapore. There's been a variety basically that come over. It might not be too often because obviously traveling is
Travel.
expensive.
Yeah. Of course.
But in terms of the events that I've been to, I've been lucky enough to be able to go and fly to them and to participate as well. And it is just a very good experience because you're meeting a lot more people than you would at, say, like UKSG or a
Yeah. Of
small
course.
grassroots event, which sounds terrifying. But again, to kind of explain the two events, ESA Winter is about a maximum of 150 to 200 people. And because there's less people than there is at summer, getting to know somebody and talking to someone is a lot easier than you would do at summer. Summer is the
Yeah.
one that everybody saves up for and gets to
Yep.
because in the summer everything happens. In the winter, people don't tend to go out too much. They don't go like, I mean, they might go to an escape room or something,
Yeah.
but they won't go out. Whereas in the summer, you've got like the beach, people go to the zoo, you might go karting, which
Hmm.
I usually do every year,
Yeah. Can
and
imagine.
there's a variety of other stuff as well. Like
Yeah.
it's not just limited to that. You'll actually be able to travel between Sweden and Denmark. So for those that don't know, so ESA is set in. I mean, the location will change. It could change anytime in the future, but right now it is at the Quality Hotel View in Hylia or Hyley. So
Hmm.
Hyllie. I think that's how you
Close
spell
enough.
it. And it's near the city of Malmo or Malma. And to get there, you fly to. I mean, there's a variety of ways to get there, but the easiest way is to fly to Copenhagen, which is in Denmark,
Hmm.
and you get a train which is about 10-15 minutes that
Right.
goes under a bridge and it crosses between Denmark and the south coast of Sweden, where ESA is,
Right.
and it's really easy to get to.
Brilliant.
Very convenient for anyone that's never been. It is a very fun event.
Yeah.
In terms of like personal experiences with the event, it's run very well. There's a
Hmm.
variety of staff members that will help you. There are security. There's all sorts
Yeah.
to make the event as secure and as safe as possible. No matter who you are, what you are, it's there for everybody.
Perfect.
And
I've
yeah.
I was just gonna say, so on a personal note, so how many times have you been to an ESA event? Because I know you've been to UKSG a few times. Maybe a few is an
Um,
understatement, but
yeah, that's
yeah,
definitely an understatement.
but yeah,
um,
ESA, because I mean, you say yourself it's twice a year, so obviously less potential. UKSG is 4 times a year for those that don't know. Um,
so I think in terms of ESAs, I think the next one will have been I think seventh when I
oh,
go to it.
okay.
I've been lucky enough to do. So I think it was summer 2019 was my first.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do the last one that was before COVID, which was winter 20. ESA winter 2020. And obviously they run back on site in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
23, and then yeah. So winter 24 will be my seventh. But unlike most events that I do, I usually do like the full week for ESA, but due to not travel restrictions, but due to time constraints and funding and
Of
stuff,
course,
and
yeah, yeah, of
my
course.
job and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to save holidays, I've took the decision to only do the latter weekend for the winter,
Yeah,
and then do the full week in the summer. But people go. I will just say this as well: is that with ESA, it lasts a full week, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be there the full week. There are people
yeah,
that do go to this event, similar to UKSG as well, and film runs and so on,
mm-hmm.
where they will go only for a day or a select few days. That might be because of the fact that they, again, like me, it might be a case of lack of holidays, lack of funding, so they might not be able to afford
Mm-hmm.
to stay in the hotel for a week. That sort of thing. Those that do stay a full week, I'd say you get a very good experience when you do the full week, but also it just depends on what you do when you're there because you might
Yeah,
have a bad full week. Like you might be able after the first 3 or 4 days you're there, you might end up finding that you get bored and you might want to go home.
yeah,
So realistically, it just depends on what you decide to do
mm-hmm.
at the event and how you fill your time with it. One of
Yeah,
the key things I will mention as well about the hotel that ESA is in is the fact that there is a arcade section
mm-hmm.
that changes near enough every year, every event as well.
Okay,
And it usually consists of in the winter, it's normally a few pinball tables and a few Jew beat machines and the Groove
yeah,
Coaster. And then when you get to summer, there's a lot more stuff that comes because obviously there's more people. So they
yeah,
might bring like an Outrun 2 machine, Time Crisis. It could be anything. Obviously,
yeah,
a variety of like pinball machines and things like that.
yeah,
One of the key favorites of ESA is Quick and Crash.
right,
It's a very noticeable staple and is always quite fun. But there's also, whilst I mentioned in the arcade part, it's also a great thing as well because ESA has sometimes been fortunate enough to receive products early, and ESA has essentially play tested them because
right,
obviously there's that
okay,
many people that played them.
yeah,
Just to give you like a quick example, so there was, I think it was winter last year,
mm-hmm.
there was a James Bond 007 pinball machine, and it was all James Bond themed, and it had all the old
Yeah.
posters, you only live for diamonds are forever, and
It's
so on,
funny.
and it was being play tested at ESA
It's funny you mentioned
because
that actually,
yeah,
because I'm sure I seen a video or I seen a picture of one recently, and it was as you just described. So you had the guns were the triggers for for the flippers.
yeah,
There was someone that was selling one. It was like six. I'm sure it was like £6,000. Quite expensive. I don't know where the picture was taken. It might even have been ASA, but no, that's great. And obviously the weekend the UKSG has just been what was the one? It was like Top Gun or something, or but you had like
I think
the
so,
it was
yeah,
something like that. But
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, but yeah, the pinball machines they're great. They're kind of same with the old arcade cabinets, because it's not just the game or that, but it's the art that went into it. You can really tell there's a lot of work that went into some of them. So, but yeah, no, that's great though. But I just wanted to say actually about ESA. So, um, I think what was great about ESA, as you said, is I know you said a lot of people from America, Canada, Australia travel to it.
Mm.
But ESA was well, when I heard about ESA, it was a real breath of fresh air because I thought Games Done Quick was like the only big speedrun event really, or it was the only
Yeah,
one I'd
yeah,
heard
yeah.
of, you know. So to have a European version, and obviously the UK is not too far from Sweden. Um,
Thank God for
yeah, but
that.
it's so good for a lot of the European runners, you know, because obviously getting to America is not easy. A lot of the flight, the travel, it's not practical for everyone. So that's the great thing about ESA. But
There is actually one key thing I can mention as well,
mhm,
which is probably the final thing I'll mention about ESA.
mhm,
And this kind of puts things into perspective as well. And I've heard this on a few accounts of people that have come to the event, which is the fact that GDQ lasts a full week, it runs twice a year. ESA
uh-huh,
does the same thing, it
yep,
runs twice a year. But what I've been told, and this may shock you or may not shock
mhm,
you, is that it is actually cheaper for an American to fly to ESA, do ESA for a full week, than it is for anybody else to go to America, do GDQ for a week, because of how expensive the flights and the hotel is, and
mhm.
how cheap it is when you do the other way around. So it's
Yeah,
quite shocking, really.
it is quite surprising. I actually wasn't I wasn't sure where you were going with that at first, but that is quite a surprise. Um, just one last thing on ESA before I move on. So obviously you're going to this ESA.
hmm
Um, remind me again, what are the dates?
I've got to remember this one. So I believe if I get the dates right on my side, so the next event starts on Saturday. Yes, Saturday the 17th of February,
Mhm.
and ends on Saturday the 24th of February, and it will be running all week. I believe there's a normally, as I said before, normally the event runs 24/7.
Mhm.
However, they've introduced for this event, I don't know if it'll be to do with winter events going forward, but they have introduced a sleep
A
time
sleep period, yep.
between
Mhm.
I think like midnight and 1 a.m. Not 1 a.m. That's like 1 hour. Sorry, midnight and 7 or 8 a.m.
Yeah,
To allow the staff to actually have some rest. Which
yeah,
is really good. So, but yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people that maybe, especially people that aren't familiar with speedrun events, they don't know that speedrun events they are 24/7. They're through the night. Um, so having that break is pretty essential, especially if it's a week event,
Hmm.
a week long event, I should say. Sorry. Um, in the case of UKSG, for example, or any marathon, it's like 48 or 36 hours, whatever it is. Um, yeah, the break. You want as much time as possible to get as many runs in. But yeah, definitely over a week, you would want to have that break. So, but yeah, that's great. Um, and I was going to say there as well. What are you running at ESA?
I will be running Driver 3 or Driver, I think it is,
Driver. Is it, no,
to put it blunt.
Driv 3 or
Drift 3,
that's
that's
the
the one.
rule. If it's got a number in the middle, you have to say the number because that's like seven. And,
It's
um,
funny how it's saved on SLC as Driver 3 and then brackets Driver or whatever
Driver.
it is.
Yeah.
Or it might be the other way around, I can't remember. But yeah, so I'm running Driver 3. The all Timmy Vermicelli's Miami category.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically to sum it up. There's 10 characters
Right.
sorry, 10 of this spoof character that
Okay.
are scattered all over the map, and yeah, just need to kill all 10 as fast as possible. Should be good laugh and good fun, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's great, man. So yeah, just to kind of move on, just to say just a couple of quick points here. So, best run you've ever done. Um, not necessarily
Ooh.
best game to speedrun, just the best run that you've ever done. So it doesn't need to be a world record, but I mean, if it is a world record, it is probably one of your best ones. So,
I think my best, because this is always a question I always wonder about, which
mhm,
is I think if I could pick one, I'd probably go back to 2018, maybe.
18, right?
And I mean, Car McRae Rally 2 was one of like my main speed games and still is.
Mhm.
But back in 2018, me and another guy called Lucky, we were fighting for the record, constantly battling each other back and
Yeah.
forward. And I remember that he'd beaten me by I think about 6 seconds or something, and he beat me on Christmas Day. So it was like I'd talk about throwing fuel on the fire. It really did.
Christmas present for you.
Um, yeah. So I then spent the next 2 or 3 days, which isn't a lot, but 2 or 3 days grinding the game out, and I did a time that was nearly 2 minutes faster based off pure driving alone. I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest I've ever pushed for a run, and I put that down as one of my best. Like right now, a 125 or whatever it was.
Hmm.
That's nothing compared to what times we've got now on the game, which are like 114, I think,
Yeah.
115, which is ridiculous. But this was back before like massive skips were found, and it was
Yeah.
purely like driving based
Just the
with a
driving
few
ability.
bits.
Yep.
I just remember pushing so hard. I remember like I had chat on my screen, I had no mic on, and I only put the mic on at the end. I was like so knackered when I got to the end. I felt like I'd just done a marathon. But that was like one of my best ever runs, I think,
Good.
ever did.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. Um, just another thing, as I say, I'm just kind of going through some points here. I didn't start this off with a big list of questions or anything. I literally just took some notes and I'm kind of winging most of it. But what would you say? So not just I'm not really talking about speedrun marathons, but in speedrunning in general. So what would you say is the biggest sort of don't in terms of speedrunning? Um,
Ooh, this is interesting. It's like asking me for advice. I'd say, ooh,
yeah, think of it as
right.
asking for advice. Like,
Yeah, so if
mhm,
someone come to me with the idea of I'm looking at doing speed running, what would you recommend not what would you recommend to avoid
mhm,
getting into it? So I think to answer that question then, so like one of the biggest pet peeves for any speedrunner, I think, is
mhm.
the fact that as soon as you start going in the red, you immediately go, right, kill it, reset, and you go back to the beginning.
Yeah, mhm,
And that's a trait you'll never be able to get rid of. As much as you want to get rid of it, you'll never be able to get rid of it.
mhm,
However, the one thing I will say is as much as hard as this is to hear, because believe me, I still struggle with this myself,
mhm.
is if you manage to beat that game, no matter what happens, you still beaten that game and you can still feel proud about it. Doesn't matter if you were 15 minutes behind your PB or 20 minutes or even
Aye.
an hour.
Mhm.
The fact that you beat the game in the first place is more than what most people could probably do in the same amount of time you've just done it in.
Absolutely,
Um,
you know.
and it's one of them, really.
No, you're absolutely right. And another thing I was going to say as well, as you said about playing on, I think it's important to play on. Obviously, there might be times where you think, "Oh, I can't be arsed. Like, I want to get a run going," and that's totally fine to feel like that. But if you never, I'll give you an example. So I say I play Postal 2. A lot of my runs generally fail beyond 15 minutes because you've got the petition on Tuesday. Um, if I was to never play Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if I was to reset every time I got a fail at Tuesday, I would forget how to do the rest of the run. Or I
Mm.
would get to that point in the PB run, and because I've not done it in about 6 weeks because I keep resetting, I'd be like a deer in the headlights. I'd be like, "Oh shit, what do I do?" So yeah, that would be my take on what you've just said. I agree with what you're saying there in terms of you're still beating it faster than probably most people, but again, it's about actually playing the game and not forgetting, um, and just
I
trying.
mean,
Yeah,
go
sorry,
on. I was going to say that
mm-hmm,
there's two things that it also brings up as well,
mm-hmm,
that you need to consider. Is that the first one is the fact that in a marathon, if anything goes wrong, you need to be prepared. Like for a marathon's sake,
yeah,
that is a key thing.
you can't stop. You have to have a way of continuing. Essentially, you know, you have to have a
Yeah.
backup strat or something, but you can't stop. That's yeah.
And the second thing is, as you just mentioned, the backup strat, it's always useful because if something goes bad and it goes badly wrong,
Mm-hmm,
you've got to be prepared to go, right, so, okay, I failed that particular part.
mm-hmm,
How do I progress through this bit now? Because I can't do that. Like, say, for example, you have a tiny window to
mm-hmm.
get this one thing, and if you miss it, you've got to go, right, I need to find something. Either find a way of making that consistent, that window,
Uh
so
huh.
you can get it every time, which does require practice, that's never out of the question. But
Yeah.
also, you also need to think about the fact that, okay, right, I've missed that window, it's gone. Now I need to find out how do I still get to the next part of the run from here because if you can't figure that bit out, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
And that's one of the key things. I mean, whether it's a marathon or not, you've got to keep in mind that the idea is when you say you're doing a run and you want to finish it, you need to find a way to get through any obstacle. If a game throws a ball game, a
mm,
random curveball at you, you need to be prepared.
yeah,
Obviously, in some games, there are certain games that are harder to rely on backup wise than others because there will
yeah,
be a game out there that might rely entirely on. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, might rely entirely on RNG with cards, what cards you get given,
yeah,
what the opponent is playing. So you need to be prepared for anything.
yeah, exactly.
And I mean, usually the key thing above all else is practice. But to say, if you, the words that annoy me, and I hate to say it, is that I have used them in the past and everything.
Yeah,
The key words that people use a lot are like get good or you just need to practice. It's not difficult. It will be difficult because everyone's skill level is different. If is different, so
yeah,
you might grasp it straight away, but the other person might not. If
mm-hmm,
that is the case, that's why guides need to be written to help with people that are getting into it.
mm-hmm,
But also, one other key piece of advice I can definitely give that definitely goes away from the avoid and something that would definitely help is try and find a video, preferably. I mean, I'm not saying go for the world record straps, whatever they're doing,
yeah,
but usually there'll be something that they'll do, and you might be able to ask them in the comments of their video or message them in a live
yeah.
stream or whatever, and you might be able to find out, or even the Discord server,
On
you
the
might be able
Discord,
to
yeah,
find, how it works. Like for example, in Grand Theft Auto games and some of the 3D ones,
mm-hmm,
they use the replay to skip to do like an insta pass, which beats a mission like that.
yeah,
And for me, I can't grasp it properly, but I've been showed a few times, and people have told me how to do it.
yeah,
And like I said, I can't grasp it, but then there might be somebody that might come along and go, "Oh yeah, I played a game that's like that. Yeah, I'll give it a try. I'll do it." And you might find that you pick it up easier than other people do.
yeah.
But it's interesting in keeping that in mind for sure.
I think, yeah. I mean, what I think people learn in different ways. So what you're saying there about guides, about maybe video guides, written guides, that'll always help. But at the same time, it's ultimately going to come down to you um, practicing it yourself. And what I like to do is I like to if there's a trick I'm trying to learn, I'll literally just repeat it ad nauseum until the point where I can do it like 3 times in a row without making a mistake. For example, not every trick is like that. For example, especially if RNG is involved, as you say. But yeah, that's what I would say. And also another thing I would say as well is when you're getting into a game, when you want to start speedrunning a game, my best advice is don't think you know everything. Go into it like accept like it's okay to not know anything, you know.
Mm.
So go into it blind. Even just play the game yourself without even looking at any speedruns, right? Just see how quickly you can beat it, and then maybe start looking at some runs. Look at the world record run if you want, and then you can. That's a real eye opener for me. So like when I first played Postal 2, I think my first one was like 2 hours long. I looked at the record, I looked at the leaderboard, it was like 39 minutes. I was like, holy shit! Like what am I doing wrong here? So, but it was really eye opening to see all these different tricks, and that's what prompts you to ask questions and go, how do you do this? How do you do that? Watch guides, and then you try them yourself. And again, it's a great feeling when you actually master a trick that you've been struggling with. And the thing is, as well, because of Discord and like YouTube and like speedrunning has never been easier. Um, think about back in the day, I know speedrun, I know the internet and speedruns always kind of existed, but like
Yeah.
back in the 90s and stuff, like video proof of a run wasn't readily available. It was a
Yeah.
lot harder to get videos. Nowadays, though, it's really easy. Um, there's no excuse for for someone to not have video proof of a run. I'm sorry, but um, in today's age, we've got smartphones with good cameras. You've got capture equipment, which is reasonably priced. You've got like if you're on PC, you've got Bandicam, OBS. All of that is free. So Yeah,
That's it.
there's
I mean, the one thing I will say is that obviously, in terms of video games and speedruns, is that every game is going to be different. Every game genre will be different. So there's going to be a variety of different ways of learning a speedrun and
of course,
learning
yeah.
strats and tactics. I mean, the easiest one for me, I mean, obviously, like I said, I do racing games. So for me, it's about learning the tracks or stages, whatever the heck I'm racing on,
Yeah.
how the car handles, and then also if it's got gears, do the gears provide an advantage or not, and learning how to use those as well. Again, everything's completely different, whereas it might be in a case of, I don't know, maybe Doom or something like that, you might end up having a case of, right, so if I kill this guy over here,
Hmm.
and he does then if you know exactly where he's going to appear from, you can shoot him straight away. But then it might be a case of if I leave him but kill him, then he might stop everything else spawning. So there's a lot of different tactics that you can pick up and use. I mean,
Hmm.
the main thing above all else with speedrunning as well is, and I've said this to a fair few people, is that it's okay to not like speedrunning in general,
Hmm.
but the one thing I will say, a bit like how I've done with motorsports, is that give it one try, just
Give it
one
a go,
try.
yeah.
And if you don't like it and it's not for you, then it's fine. You can always, like I said, if you enjoy watching them and not participating, that's completely fine. There's nothing stopping you. I mean, at the end of the day, going back to events in marathons and stuff like UKSG and ESA,
Hmm.
there are people that go to these events that don't speedrun or might do speedruns but don't have anything
Yeah.
on stage or they might not participate and they will be like sat in the audience going, like watching it all, they'll be talking with people. I mean, the
Hmm.
thing is as well, this is the other like key part I didn't mention about ESA, but it goes for any in-person event. Just because of the fact that it's a speedrunning event doesn't necessarily mean that you're chained to that event. Like you have to sit there for 36 hours watching everything.
No,
It is a
absolutely
case
not.
of
Yeah.
you make them events, as I said with ESA, you make them whatever you want. I think I spent maybe summer last year, maybe 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours in total out the full week, like in front of the stream watching runs altogether.
Yeah.
Because half the time I was either, I mean, I might have been at the bar at night drinking with friends or in someone's room. I might have gone out for the day, gone doing
Hmm.
something with friends, gone shopping, just hanging around with people and just talking. I mean, for me personally, ESA, UKSG, Film Runs, NSG, BSG, the loads, the list goes on.
Yeah.
But at the events themselves, for me personally, I see these events as a great way to socialize rather
Yeah.
than gaming part of it. Like gaming just takes a back seat when you get there. You're there to see.
Hmm.
I mean, you can go for gaming if you wish, but for
Hmm.
me, the key part and the key note I would say, hands down, is if you're going to ESA, and this is the big one, is that if you're going to ESA and you're only going to sit in front of the stream for a full week, you might as well not bother because
Yeah.
you can do that at home
To
without
be,
wasting any money whatsoever.
yeah, to be bit blunt there, you'd be bored out your tits.
Yeah,
You know, like it's okay to be. You shouldn't feel ashamed that you go to a speedrun event and you're not glued to the screen, as you say, because see
yeah,
when you come home, even if whether it's a weekend, whether it's 5 or 7 days, if all you do is watch the stream, you will be bored and you'll be thinking, screw that, I'm not going, because it is exhausting watching anything for any length of time. Do you know what I mean? Like 3, 4, 5, 36 hours, whatever it is.
mm.
Humans just can't do that. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's we don't have that. We don't have that like massive attention
we,
span.
we really don't, and especially
So
nowadays with social media, like our attention spans are even worse. But um,
yeah,
if you yeah, you're no, I totally agree with that. So that's why I say if you go to a speedrun event, go for the occasion, go for the social aspect, meet people, talk to people. If you've spoke to someone online, obviously meet them in person. Go for drinks. If you're not a drinker, that's fine. Obviously, do other things.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
as you said, people go crazy. People go crazy golf or go karting, or there's always stuff to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it might end up being a case of, I mean, UKSG, for example, we have obviously like we have the stream, but then we also have every now and again, like on a Friday, before the event even starts,
yeah,
we'll meet up and we'll all go out for food, and we might
yeah,
end up going out drinking or whatever. Or some people might have food and then go back to the hotel.
mm-hmm,
And then when you're at the actual event, it's a case of everyone's usually in the room or chills for like a good part of the day,
mm-hmm,
but not everyone wants, as you said, not everyone's going to be sat in front of that room. It's
yeah,
that, sorry, sat in front of that screen
yeah.
for 15, 20 hours,
Oh,
go to sleep, get up, then go back and then sit there for the next 12 and
no,
just do the same again. I
absolutely
was
not.
just,
You know, and it's the thing is like when you go to a speedrun event, if you're not running, um, who's running or what's being ran is always going to be a big deciding factor for you. I know it is for me. For example, I mean, this is no disrespect to the runners or anything. Obviously, you run what you want. But if
mm,
there is a game, if there's like, say, for example, I'm not a big fan of Sonic, right? I'll be honest. Nothing against the series or the character. I just never played Sonic. It's not a series I'm into. If I went to an event and it was literally all Sonic games and nothing else, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have
yeah,
much in common to talk about. I'd probably be quite burnt out after the first couple of games, to be honest. Um, so you go, you see, for example, if I see like a Resident Evil run or a GTA run or something like that, I'd be like, okay, that's that's another reason to go. Although usually when I think like that, what happens is that runs at like 4 in the morning, and I miss it anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, but
I mean, the other thing is as well, we touched upon this before, which
mhm.
is like making new friends, is that
Yeah, definitely.
that can also be an influencing factor in going to events because you might have met someone. I mean, for me personally, I've met God knows how many people through UKSG,
Yeah.
but there are people that have been to ESA or other events that are also sometimes manage to make it over to UKSG, and
Hmm.
I might make it over to their event, and they happen to be there and everything.
Hmm.
But it just depends. I mean, like I said, the most part it's either you're into speed running or it's not for you, or but
Hmm.
either way, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like I say, the social aspect is another big factor. I know some people people go to marathons. We touched on this earlier, and it's people go for different lengths of time, or some people maybe turn up, do their run, and then they go home. They might have work, for example, or maybe they just wanted to do their run, and that was it. And again, there's no harm in that. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're going to the event, you're showing face, you're helping raise money. Your presence is there to kind of that might result in someone donating.
Well, that's it.
Um,
That's one of the key things. I mean,
mm-hmm,
I've not done it too often where I've showed up and then buggered off the same day. I mean, I did recently with WASD, but
mm-hmm,
at the end of the day, is that as you said, the organisers will note that not in a bad way. They will note. They will like
mm-hmm,
you might have. So what you've come up for like a day or a couple of hours. You've
mm-hmm.
showed your face. You've done a run. You've gone. It doesn't matter. You might think inside that okay, I buggered off. They probably seen that
Yeah.
as a selfish move. Realistically, we're happy that you made the effort to come, to do
Yeah.
your run, to participate.
Uh,
Whether it drags donations in or not is always a bonus.
and
And
at the
at
end
the
of
end of
the
the day,
uh,
if you enjoyed yourself, there's
uh,
where's who loses? Nobody loses.
and
Everybody
and
wins.
also, and this is the big part. You bought your ticket, so
Yeah,
they've got your
there
money at
you
the end
go.
of the day. You know what I mean? So it's there's no really a loser, but personally, I do feel kind of bad leaving early sometimes. And I think in the past, I think I must have been to about 4 or 5 UKSGs now. The most recent one we were at, I had to leave. Well, no, I stayed mostly the full event. The only thing I didn't stay for was the customary drinks at spoons afterwards, which I was raging about. But I had work the next day, and I think the time before that, I did my run and then I had to go because I was working that same afternoon, um, which again I was a bit nonplussed about. But yeah, as I say, there's no harm in that. Again, I don't think anyone's expecting you to sit and watch the stream for however long it is, because there are going to be things that maybe don't interest you as much, and
I
you
mean, it's like you got. I mean, take for example my UKSG Red, the event we've just both been to, is that my experience with that was that the key highlights for me were going out on the Friday night and getting food and catching up and seeing everybody, which is always great,
yeah,
and having a few to drink on the Friday night. But then excluding the stuff outside of the event, like
mm-hmm.
on at the actual event, was literally catching up with people. Like I spend 2 days catching up with everybody. Like it's
Yeah,
just a great laugh. We might be sat at the back of the room till like 1 a.m. laughing
mm-hmm.
at random words like Big Bill, for example, or other stuff
Yeah,
like that. There'll just be a random reason why we might laugh at something, but
yeah,
it's a case of you're there, you've made the effort. But for me, it's like on the Saturday, like that happened like late Saturday night, early
mm-hmm.
Sunday morning. But then it was like on the Sunday night after the event had finished, and we'd had a drink or two at Spoons. Was that we ended up going out after that and didn't last very long. But I remember, I think on that Sunday night, that we ended up sitting in someone's room watching crappy films because it was a laugh. And
Yeah,
the key things like that that can make an event more memorable. I mean, a lot of people said the Elmo run made it very
yeah,
memorable, but which is fair enough. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I watched that back a few times now, and I still like laughing at it. But forgetting the game and the run aside here,
Mm-hmm.
is that your key moments in an event
Mm-hmm.
won't always be game related. You might come away with it, and it might be all games that you've
Mm-hmm.
watched and gone, I watched that run, I watched that run. The
Yeah,
key thing is, and as you said, all was that at the end of the day, all these events they do this, they put the event on, they make the effort to set everything up. At the end of the day, everybody else that goes, runners, attendees, they
mm-hmm.
make up how the atmosphere is. They make the event what it is.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's nothing without the volunteers, the techies, the
mm-hmm.
hosties, everything. But then you've obviously got the other side of it, which is like, right, okay, so you've done hosting, you've done tech, you've set up the event, you've attended it. And it's like, right, okay, but like I said, other little key bits and pieces. It might just be a case of even going out on during the Saturday, during the daytime, going out with a bunch of people, getting food.
Oh yeah.
That can be a highlight. It
I'll tell
doesn't have
you.
to be a game. It's one of them. It really is.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, the most recent the UKSG was probably my favourite one. Um, Obviously the Friday, going out for food, drinks. Went to NQ64 for the first time ever. Definitely be back there at some point.
Oh yeah,
And during the day, me and well, obviously me, you, and Skenme went to the Fox place,
yeah,
which was my first time in there as well. So it's that kind of whole you see new things. I would probably never
yeah.
have thought to go there myself, but now I'll always kind of remember that place. So that's good for Chinese, whatever it is you're looking for. So I know that's not really got anything to do with speedrunning, but it's that part of it. And of
Good
course,
food.
but yeah, the food was brilliant. I was gonna say actually. So I think it was last weekend, the one that's just been. I was coming home from the pub and I went to this place called Doctor Noodles
Mm.
in Glasgow. It's like very very similar to Fox. Like you pick your three. You get to make your own box basically, and it was ready in like 2 minutes, right? Which was the first red flag, right? Because I knew that told me it wasn't like fresh. So, because when we went to Fox, it was like 15 minutes. So, anyway, I got it. I got the same thing I got in Fox, and I looked at it, and it was disgusting. It was like the sauce was like, it was black bean sauce, but it was like black sludge almost. It was far
Oh
too salty, and I took like 2 bites of it, and my mouth was like not on fire, but you know when something's too salty and it just goes numb.
yeah.
It's
You're like, I
yeah.
need a drink.
I was like, oh, put that in the bin, and I felt bad because it cost me like a tenner. So, but
That's
yeah,
a scam.
oh
That is a
yeah,
scam.
I mean, the other one was only £6. So, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, going slightly off topic there, but yeah, no, it's the speedrun event side of it is a huge reason I'd say to get into speedrunning. And if you are running a game yourself, what I would say to anyone is if you run a game, you're fairly competent, confident in it, and you're thinking about going for the marathon, just go for it. And also look for local events because I said it before, UKSG was my first and only marathon that I've been to so far, and say it's in Glasgow. It's about 7 miles from where I live, so it's very easy for me to get to. Obviously, other people travel a lot further for it, but yeah, have a look. As I say, I think I got quite lucky in that sense. Because like UKSG is small compared to ESA, for example, but it's still got a
Mm.
very committed group of people that run it and that follow it, and so if there is something like that in your local area, go to it, support it and see what becomes. And then who knows, ESA games done quick, you never know.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's funny actually. Just as kind of like a final point with events
Mm-hmm.
from me is that being honest, people have this is gonna sound like an interesting statement, but people have regular holidays, like they go somewhere, they'll be in a hotel for a week or 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
My holidays, they involve going to another country or another hotel or going up,
Mm-hmm.
driving up or down the country,
Yeah.
going somewhere, playing games, then coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And the gaming bit takes a backseat wherever I go. I mean, I went to Fin runs back in
Mm-hmm.
early Jan for in Finland,
Yeah.
and that was a completely different experience. I mean, I'm going to ESA, which is Sweden,
Yeah.
along with Denmark, and then NSG, which is in Norway, which is the first year this is running. So I'm doing that. But then it's like on my bucket list. My bucket list isn't going to the Grand Canyon or doing this or doing that.
Yeah.
It's like going to friggin' Australia to try ASM
Yeah.
and to try, But then I know for a fact that if I go to another country, is that I don't think I could go if I didn't know people from it. So, for
Yeah.
example, there are people that I know that are going to this Norwegian one that are
Mm-hmm.
from Norway, but also people from ESA are going. So that helps. There are people that go to events in France, Spain, Italy. I know
Mm-hmm.
people that are from France, Spain, Italy, and it just helps. I mean, ESA realistically is like, as we kind of said, is like the European hub,
Yeah.
and you meet people from all different nationalities. GDQ is exactly the same; it's just in America,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot more people that go GDQ. But the thing is that these big events are basically like hubs, and all the other countries that do all these other different events, like
Mm-hmm.
UKSG and
Yeah.
so on, act as like a smaller hub, and
Yeah.
they all like link into these events little by little. It's like think of it as like a spider network where
Mm-hmm.
you've got like the big daddy. I don't know, like the head of it, which is like ESA, GDQ, whichever, and then you've got all these branching paths, which are
Yeah.
like NSG, UKSG, BSG,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Italian one is, like the Italiano one, and so on. And people also, as well, because of the enthusiasm and the rise in speedrunning over the last 10 years in particular, is that events are becoming more and more not popular, but there's more of them,
Yeah.
and they are starting to slowly pop up in lots of different places all over the world. And in the UK, I mean, we've got at one point I think the UK used to have 4 or 5 events
Mm-hmm.
altogether per year, all in various different places. I think obviously UKSG ran in Glasgow. There was one in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that ran in London. There was one apparently in Southampton, I
Yep.
think, or somewhere around that Bournemouth, Portsmouth, wherever it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was the one that I've just been to, was as well, which was at the University of Warwick. So
I've heard of
the thing
I've heard
is,
of WASD or WASD, however you say it. And obviously there was, I think we spoke about UKSM at the last one, and
yeah,
UKSG. Those are like the three I've heard of. I know there is other ones, but those are kind of the big ones that I've in the UK anyway that I've heard of.
I mean, events change, people step down, and people don't run events because,
Yeah.
again, to run events, the biggest thing with speedrun above all else is, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but the biggest reason why events come and go which
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why if you see one in your local area, as all said, definitely try and get to it because that event might not be around for much longer.
Yeah.
You've got to remember something is that an event costs money. It costs money for storage, it costs money for the venue, whether it be a massive hotel or a small shack.
Yeah.
You've obviously got to make sure that there's internet access, so you might have to pay for that. That sort of thing. There's obviously a case of you'll have to pay for the equipment, or if you're lucky, like for
Yeah.
example, I think was able to borrow university equipment.
Yeah.
That's how they did theirs. But like UKSG has had, I think it was Paulister's computer that we started
Mm-hmm.
with, and now it's like we've got a stream PC, we've got a gaming PC for the actual event for the
Mm-hmm.
runners, and so on. And it's took us quite a long time to get to
Yeah.
where we are. And if you are thinking about running your own marathon, there's two ways you can do it. There is the on-site approach, which again, money is the main
Mm-hmm.
one. But the second thing is online. Online speedrun events can be done online. In my opinion, the online route is the easier way to go,
Yeah.
providing you know what you're doing. If not, I would highly recommend having a look around
Yeah.
and speaking to people
Yeah.
in
Definitely.
communities, and
Networking
there will
can.
be someone to help out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just want to kind of touch on that as well. So obviously UKSG, for those that don't know, literally started in Paulister, the head organizer. It started in his room,
Yeah.
and that gradually grew to booking on-site events in hotels, and that's I say that's how it started. That's how a lot of these events start. Then you get there's ones that kind of start online and they grow they go into that. Um, just talking about online events. Obviously, you mentioned briefly. We mentioned the pandemic. Um, that obviously affected speedrunnings because it affected marathons because we weren't allowed to meet up or anything.
Mm.
Um, how was that for you personally? Like, how did you feel about the online events?
Um. Well, I'd say I got too used to them because of the
Yeah.
fact that back when the pandemic hit, I've been to a lot of UKSG events, so it was UKSG was my main on-site one. I just started going to ESA events as well the year
Yeah.
before, and when COVID hit, everything moved online. So immediately my thoughts are, how the heck is all this gonna work? Turns
Mm-hmm.
out everyone decided to do the same thing and was like, we need to find a way. Like we want to keep bringing the event
Yeah.
to people in their homes. And in a weird way, or maybe this probably shouldn't come as any surprise, but speedrunning events as a whole grew substantially because more people, everyone was stuck at home, they had nothing to
People had nothing
do,
else to do.
they're out
Yeah.
of work,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, numbers came in,
Yeah.
donations came in, and there was a lot of events that showed the face for the first time. There were events that were already on site that have moved to online,
Mm-hmm.
and I think overall, in a weird kind of way, the pandemic actually benefited any sort of
Yeah.
speedrunning marathon because, like I said, everyone was stuck at home, so viewer numbers were higher and things like that. That's not to say viewer numbers aren't high at on-site events because we've
Mm-hmm.
come out of the pandemic now,
Yeah.
but when we started going back on site again in 2021, 22, I'd
Yeah.
say 22 was more or less the year.
22. Yeah. Well, I think that was the
Um,
first on-site UKSG. So.
and it was like a mixture of half and half. And events were doing on site events anyway,
Mm-hmm.
particularly ESA and GDQ. They were doing on site events with like a hybrid format,
Right. Okay.
which was like you could have the person could be at the event or they didn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be weird blocks where you'd have like 4 runs of people at the event,
Yeah.
and then they'd have like an overnight slot
Mm-hmm.
for us in the UK because it'd be like 10 a.m., 11 a.m.
Aye.
over here, and they'd be
Yeah.
like 3 p.m. in the States for them events or Australia and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
you could participate and they'd switch to that online part. You'd be able
Mm-hmm.
to, you'd still be on like the main stream, but you wouldn't be actually at the event. You could do it from your own home. and eventually
Yeah,
in I think it was late 22, early 2023, when UKSG came back on site, they decided we're not doing this hybrid stuff. We want to be back on site properly. We want everyone to
yeah.
be there, everyone to see each other. We managed to get a great event. We did manage to do that.
I got
And same
so
with everything else.
sorry to cut you off there. I got to say though, I think with you, this might sound like a weird comparison, but I mean, I think the pandemic obviously made people work from home, and I think that was my biggest sort of fear when it came to speedrunning events because I worked from home during the pandemic, and when we were allowed back in the office, there was literally I was the only one in there from my team, and occasionally a couple of other people would come in, but very rarely. And the job I'm in now, you can still sort of feel the effects of that. So I'm still working in an office, and I think there's like 2 days a week people are required to be in. But pre-pandemic, 2020, 2019, whatever, that was, that wasn't a thing. You were required to be in the office. I totally get for some people, working from home or marathon from home, whatever, is a lot more convenient for them. But it, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it turns you lazy, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think getting out and seeing people, and it's a good thing. It's good for your mental well being as well as other people's.
Yeah,
You
so
know.
the social aspect
Mm-hmm.
really, for a lot of people, took a big knocking with the pandemic. Regardless,
Yeah,
speedrun aside, it just everyone's mental health was all over the
absolutely.
place.
And I'm not trying to sound
And
like
it's yeah,
no, sorry. I was just gonna say I'm not trying to sound all poor me. I probably had one of the better times during the pandemic. I was able to stay in full time employment. Um, didn't really get sick. You know, still had my family and stuff. There's people that lost their jobs, people lost family members, So I probably had a good time of it. But I think when the on site events were back, I was really happy to see on site events back because I thought, oh, people are going to be like, no, we want to do them online now. We can just do it from our bedroom. It's like, no, I'd love to because my first UKSG that I actually got accepted into was supposed to be on site. Pandemic cancelled it, so I was really disappointed because I was like really looking forward to meeting everyone.
mm,
So it was good, kind of getting to go back to that. But it's nice. It's nice to see that the speedrun though they want the on site events to continue, and I'm happy with that. But
I mean, I'm for online events and on site. I
mhm.
don't mind whichever people prefer. But I always think on site is better because you get to not just do the event in person, but
Mhm.
also the fact is you get to meet lots of new people, and also usually in most cases you'll probably come out with a few new friends or a new friend
Yeah,
at least,
absolutely.
because you'll be able to talk about literally talk to somebody and be able to get to talk to them
Mhm.
physically and get to know them. I mean, you get to know them over something like a Discord call, but me personally, I'm more of a get. I mean, again, each to their own, but know in person. It's I'd rather
Yeah,
know someone physically than like, oh, I've been talking to you online for years, and it's
yeah,
like it has you have connections via online. People do that,
of
but
course, yeah,
for me, it is more of a physical
yeah,
approach than a verbal one.
definitely, man. I mean, there's I've got friends online that I've maybe spoke to like on a call. Some never, some once or twice, but I'm definitely more old school in that sense. I prefer meeting up with people over a drink or over food, because that's how you get to know them. So I think yeah, it's good speedrun at home. Having that online event, but without if it wasn't on site, we never would have got the that Elmo moment.
Yeah,
So
that's so yeah.
that's the thing. You've got to consider that. I mean, well, I suppose if you had a commentator, I suppose if you could still do that, but it wouldn't be the same without the reaction from the people in the background. So,
No,
um,
no, no, that's
but yeah.
very true.
Also, just a quick side note. As I think I told you before, I submitted to AGDQ or SGDQ. I can't remember. Um, when it was online. So
Mm.
from that point of view, it was great for people probably got to run at games done quick when they might never have gotten the chance to because
Yeah,
it was online.
that was. I was gonna actually. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, so one of the key things we got for UKSG was the variety in runners.
Mm-hmm.
We have people from the US, from Australia, and all the rest of it, and they'd never been
Yeah,
to UKSG, and it was easier than ever. With
of
online
course.
events, it makes things extremely easy because you can go right, okay, so they're in that time zone, and I'm in
Mm-hmm.
this time zone, and yeah, okay, they might be like 6 hours or behind or 7 hours in front,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll be able to work around a schedule and work with time zones. But then with an in-person event, as I said, everything comes down to money. So whether it's a case of traveling or doing an event in person, it will cost money. But the thing is that in my opinion, the one thing that on-site does that online can't do is give you that, like I said, not the physical touch, but the physicality, I guess.
No,
The
no, I know what you're
like
trying to
actually
say.
seeing, the emotional seeing people and
Yeah.
actually being able to, like I said, being able to talk to them face to face. I mean, for me, our like the UKSG first on site event post COVID was autumn 2022,
Yeah.
and I think that had our highest ever attendance in
Mm-hmm.
person because that many people were like, UKSG is actually coming on
Just
site. Oh
went
my god, I
back.
need
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
And it because of all the less traveling, non-traveling that people did during
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic. Those that were fortunate enough to save money and everything like that were
Mm-hmm.
able to actually come over. And some of them have even come back since then, which
Yeah.
has been really good. Some haven't, but some have. And
Yeah.
again, it's depends on financial situation, but
Of
all
course.
things aside, it's yeah, if you can get to an event, it's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think. Is there anything you want to close off with, by the way? Not just about events, but about just anything in general,
Uh,
really.
Speedrunning is, as I'll just quickly recap my previous point, which was that speedrunning is either for you, it's not for you. If you might be a viewer or someone that participates,
Mm-hmm.
but whichever way you decide to go about it, just know that there are a variety of communities, gaming wise. There are like the Mario community, Sonic community, and so on. So you have their own communities, and events are pretty awesome. Whether
Yeah.
you do speedrunning or not, you don't have to be a speedrunner to go to an event.
Yeah.
Just to throw that out there, it's not a case of. I thought that with the SA
Mm-hmm.
years and years ago. I always thought that it was a popularity contest and that the most popular streamers and the most popular games got in. Turns out that's not the case. It
No.
is a case of if you can talk about the run or make it exciting or entertaining, or even if it's something completely new, like the game might be brand new and you've just broke it instantly,
Want to show it?
that's
Yeah.
also another thing as well. But
Yeah.
also, like I said, the atmosphere is one of the key things in the event, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like a music festival. You go to a music festival, you get the atmosphere, you got the
Mm-hmm.
gigs, you've got everything, all the artists and everything. Think of it as UKSG is like that, but on a much smaller scale. I like not
Yeah.
just UKSG, but speedrunning events in general. I like that on a smaller scale, and then thousands of people that
Mm-hmm.
are watching, I don't know, Noel Gallagher or the Foo Fighters or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever whoever they're watching. Think of it as they go on stage, they perform for you guys, and it's 30,000 people in the crowd, or 50,000, or 100,000, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it as speedrunning is like that, except you don't see the 50,000 people because they're all at home or
All
they're
over the
online.
place. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me personally, the idea of an in-person event as well is that I'll just quickly go on that a second. Is
Mm-hmm.
that a speedrun event isn't as it isn't no, it's not as popular, isn't as scary as you think, mainly because of the fact that, like for example, UKSG might have 1,500 people watching,
Yeah.
but you don't see the 1,500 people. You see 20 people behind you watching,
Yeah.
and chances are, out of them 20 people, you might end up having more people come to you after it. Usually, everyone gives each other, a quick pat on the back, so like nice run, good job, that sort
Mm-hmm.
of thing. And it's that sense of appreciation as well, which is
Yeah,
always a nice thing to have,
that's
and
the way I
that's why I
look at it.
recommend it.
That's the way I look at it. Is if you make whether you're performing in front of one person or 50,000 people, whatever, it's always going to be a bit nervous. Obviously, if there's more people, then you're always going to be it's going to be more nerve wracking for you. But the thing with speedrun events is it's fun. It's for a good cause. No one, if you make a mistake, no one cares really. They're thinking, how dare he made that mistake? They're not going to be
Yeah.
angry with you. If anything, they're going to be laughing and probably because it went wrong. Wasn't expecting that. So there's no downside if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So that's the thing. It's just that initial getting to that stage of get once the run started though, and like you're focused, that's it. All the kind of nerves really, like all that nervousness before goes away. So but yeah.
Well, that's actually one last key thing to point out
Mm-hmm.
is if you get nervous very quickly
Mm-hmm.
or you're stumped on what to say during a speed run,
Mm-hmm.
two ways around it.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, you can always get a co-commentator to
Absolutely.
sit
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
Um, Now, if you'll have one or two people with a co-commentator, or maybe one of three if you're very lucky. The
Mm-hmm.
first one being you'll have a co-commentator. You can get a co-commentator that knows the game,
Yeah.
preferably knows the category as well. But
Mm-hmm.
if you can get someone that knows the game, then great,
Yeah.
because they might be able to take any leeway off you for that. Second option you've got is to get a close friend who might not know the game, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're the person that's on co-commentary, what you can do to help the person relax, and in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, it does usually work, is you can talk to them and ask them questions about the game, like what's going on and everything.
Yeah.
And it might be a case of they can only answer certain questions at certain times, so you do have to like time it well.
Time. Yeah. Yeah. Of
But
course.
if they explain to you as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually killing two birds one stone, because even though they're playing the game, they'll be explaining without realizing, because they'll do it to you
Mm-hmm.
as a co-commentator, but they'll also, because the audio comes through the mic, you kill two birds with one stone, and the commentator will hear
Yeah.
it and the audience will hear it, so everyone goes, ah, that's what's
Yeah.
going on, that's how it works. The third one, and again, this is if you're confident enough to ask them and to get
Mm-hmm.
in contact with them as well, is to even, if you get lucky enough, to get the game developer themselves or someone who's
I,
within like the game company on board.
I
And if
was
you're able to
yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
then that is very, very lucky and can even provide an additional experience.
Well, I was just about to say
So,
that. I think it was Apache that got Dr. Doak to do his Time Splitters run, which is brilliant. I mean, um, I've never spoken to him myself, but I mean, he seems like a pretty cool guy. Obviously, he's very active on Twitter, so I don't imagine it'd be too hard to get a hold of, for that kind of thing. But that's a good idea. And it is as you say, it's a big jump going from asking a friend or a fellow runner to suddenly asking the developer.
mm,
You won't be able to do that for every game, obviously. It's not as if you're going to get Shinji Mikami to do your Resident Evil run or Shigeru Miyamoto to do your Zelda run. It's like, well, maybe, you never know, but
yeah,
you can try. Excuse me. But no, that's another good thing. I think for some people, though, for me personally, if I had Mike J doing my Postal 2 run, I'd probably be like more nervous, if anything, because I'm trying to like, in my head, I'd be like, oh, I'm trying to impress him almost. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's it. Yeah,
yeah,
it is one of them.
yeah, yeah.
Like
No,
I
that's
said,
great.
it's a confidence thing more than
Yeah.
anything else. But like I said, if we go game developer aside, and that sort of thing, it's like I said, you best bet really to help relax, unless
Mm-hmm.
you're that confident with what you're going to talk about. It's a case of either have a friend that
Mm-hmm.
you either know or met that have met before, and you
Mm-hmm.
can explain to them,
Yeah.
and just have like a casual conversation. They can always help. A good friend, can always help calm your nerves.
Yeah.
We're talking, but also, like I said, you have the main option, which is a case of someone that's played the game before, knows the game, doesn't know, might not know every single glitch or everything else, but
Hmm.
they'll be able to fill in basically downtime information. So they might be able to say like, oh yeah, so this game came out in da da da.
Yeah,
It was made by this team, this company. Fun
yeah.
fact, da da da. You know, they might know some stuff that you might not know
That's what
as
I
well as
do,
talk
really.
about normally. So
Yeah, that's what I do. So the most recent run I did, so there was a lot of kind of walking about, not much happening. So I would use that time for, I would say to the host, like, do you want to do some donations, or I would come up with some trivia or history about the run or the game, um, just to keep it interesting. Because like if there's too much like dead air, it can be quite boring. And another thing, sorry, just a side note as well. I was like, if you've never done a marathon run before and you don't know how to commentate, don't don't watch people. Like, you get people are some people are very theatrical. They like to kind of make it entertaining, visually entertaining. But don't think you have to be like that, because every commentator is different. Um, like some people are like myself, kind of quite probably come off as quite deadpan. But I like to kind of provide information or stuff that'll be stuff that'll be interesting to people. And then you get obviously like trying to think of an example, like Yato. Um,
yeah,
people watch him because he's hilarious. So, he's like when something goes wrong, especially um,
yeah. He's like, what the hell, man?
so yeah. But yeah, don't feel like you have to model it after a certain person or anything. Just be yourself, and that's way more interesting to some people. Because you might watch a runner and you think you kind of identify with them and think, oh, I'm a bit like that,
Hmm.
and just do it that way. But no, yeah, definitely that would be my kind of advice. But that's it. Well, as I said, really, that's what you want to kind of close off on, because I don't really have any other sort of points to bring up. Um,
No, I can't think of any more, to be fair.
aye.
I mean, I could maybe just quickly say
Mm-hmm.
just a few like final quick closing thoughts, and I promise these will be quick.
Yeah, go for it,
Is
man.
that like I said, with speedrunning, you go with whatever genre you're most comfortable with. In my
Mm-hmm.
case, it's racing games and car games, but it might be shoot 'em ups, it could be RPGs, it could be horror games, puzzle games, pretty much any game you can think of. There's probably a speedrun for it, or if there isn't, you can always be the first to do
You
it.
can make one, yeah, exactly. You can
Um,
submit a page to
and
speedrun.com.
also, one thing that's definitely worth keeping in mind, some speedruns are better than others, but only you will know which ones are better than others. It's all fine down in me saying I don't like RPGs, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like Pokemon or Final Fantasy, it doesn't do it for me. But then that might be the opposite for you. It might be a case of you like the long haul games, the games that involve like real time strategy and
Yeah,
that sort of thing, and role playing as characters and beating that as fast as possible and learning little techniques to make it a bit quicker and
yeah,
stuff like that. So it is personal taste. Speedrun is about personal taste more than anything else, and what you do speedruns of and what events you submit to if you do decide to submit to any events
mm-hmm.
is completely up to you. That it's not mandatory or compulsory. There is no you must do this game, you must use this
Yeah,
software, you must have 1080p recording software
of
or
course, yeah,
4K internet. It's people join at various times with various amounts of equipment.
yeah,
Um, like I said,
absolutely,
going back to the start, you might end up even a setup like a laptop camera, looking at your TV screen with a phone that has a timer going, as long as there's something on the screen timing you, in some cases,
yeah.
or in most cases, you've got some sort of timing method, is a good idea.
That
And
that would be my
yeah,
so my sort of do's and don'ts. Like, so just kind of quickly here. So sort of what I would say is don't do it at your own pace, as you say. Pick your game. Don't if it feels like a chore, it's not the run for you. Basically, do what you're happy with. Don't take requests. I would say, I know people. I know people. I know we mentioned Easy Speezy, but that is what he does. But if you're doing a game you like, don't say like, oh yeah, give me more games to run. Do what you like. You know, because you might get requests and it's something totally garbage, or you start something and you think, oh, this is rubbish. Um, do it because you're happy with it. Same with the length of the run. Some people, as you said, some people like RPGs, so like 8 hour runs. Other people, personally, for me, an hour is like the cap. I wouldn't really touch anything over an hour long, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, um, do it your own way. If you have the equipment, I would say, if you have a PC, you probably should be using a timer, like an integrated timer. You can record. There's by the way, there's no obligation to stream. Um,
Yeah, you can local record if needs be.
you don't have to stream. I know some leaderboards might say you have to stream runs though, and that's again, if that's what they want you to do, then that's it. But again, you don't have to stream. You have to show your face. You don't have to talk. Just But again, that's what I would say. That really comes down to the rules. Check the rules for any game you want to speedrun. Learn at your own pace. Don't be like, I must get the world record and all that, because that kind of takes you down a wrong path, if you will.
Mm.
There's people that go in with that mindset, and some of them end up cheating because they were so driven on getting it, and they were like, and I should have got that. So be happy with what you achieve, but don't think the world's over because you haven't got a world record or something. Because it's speedrunning's great and all that, but at the end of the day, it's not having a world record. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's more of a speedrunning is a hobby. It's not a way of life.
No,
And obviously, how much time you choose to dedicate to it is completely up to you. But there are people that will dedicate. I mean, God knows how much I've dedicated to speedrunning in the
yeah,
past, but it's a case of, I like doing online events. I like doing in-person events. I'm
of
kind of
course,
driven by it.
yeah,
Whether I've got a record in a game or not doesn't really. It depends, but for the most part, it doesn't really bother me, especially if I'm not like gunning for it straight out the box. I'm not really bothered.
yeah,
Like I know for a fact that a lot of games, a lot of times, will have been grinded down, especially the more popular titles. They will be very accurate and
yeah. Very
about as
optimized, and
precise.
yeah,
But like I said, it's a case of the key. The key trait to try and keep away from is as soon as something goes wrong, like as we said before, if there's something goes wrong, try and figure a way around it
yeah.
and try and finish it. And at the end of the day, like I said, finishing a run is can be worth more than 20 failed runs, believe it or
Oh
not.
yeah, because you might learn something.
It's one of them.
Yeah, and just a side note as well. I just remembered this when we are talking about that. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a video of a Super Mario 64. Sorry, a Super Mario Kart runner, and he did this really hard to do trick. And because he'd never done it before, he didn't expect to see it, so he reset the run. And it was
It's like, well, that's new.
like he stopped the timer, and he was like, it was only after he stopped the timer he realized, he was like, oh shit, I got it. So try and get out of it. If you're a speedrunner and you constantly like reset as soon as it goes wrong, try and get out of that habit, because it can bite you. It can.
I'm in terms of like strats and things like that. I'm more about consistency than
Yeah.
anything else because if a certain cut or a skip or a glitch is not consistent, then I choose not to use it. I mean,
Uh,
for example, like just as a quick one is that like Colin McRae Rally 2,
uh-huh.
the guy that's got the record is a guy called Matique. I think it's like 1:14:58 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But he's done certain skips that I could learn.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I've tried to copy it and tried to do it, I failed a lot and gone, right, okay, I can't do it. And I've gone, I will do what I'm comfortable with. So he can do it because he grinded it, he did it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it because of the fact that I tried God knows how long and couldn't get it. And I was just constantly resetting. I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I will accept that I can't win against
Do
this
this. Yeah.
and that I can't do this skip
Yeah.
that saves like 30 seconds. and he can, and then it's like if it's so because it's not consistent for me, but then it might be like there's other cut that might be consistent elsewhere down the line. I'm like, okay, that's consistent. But then if someone gets it as a one-off in like an IL, so a level,
Yeah.
or a stage, if they can get it during that run, I always think, right, okay, let's see how much you can do that again. Can you do that again? And they go, no. And I go, is it that inconsistent? Like, yeah. And I'm like, right, okay, I'm not
Yeah.
using it. Simple as that.
And the thing is,
Um,
sorry
yeah.
to, but if you, there might be a trick that you can't do, right? And then maybe you'll stop that game, you'll stop playing that game for a bit, you'll come back to it, which is another thing. But just to anyone watching this that's maybe new to speedrunning or is thinking about getting into it, getting burnt out is totally normal. You will speedrun for months, maybe even years at a time. You might go away from it for months or years at a time. You'll come back to it. It's not everyone speedruns for like constantly.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I personally I haven't done much speedrunning over the last few months really, but I still, if you go on my Twitter, it still says speedrunner because I still keep up with it and I'm still trying to get back into it really. Um, but back to what I was saying, there might be a trick you don't know how to do now, but give it time. You might maybe you'll try again in a couple of years time and you'll do it and you'll do it first time. You'll be like, oh shit, oh that was easy. Well, what was
Yeah.
stopping me? And then you do it and suddenly it becomes like a consistent part of your run. So um, that's what, and so sometimes it just requires you to, like, if you can't do something, if you're getting frustrated and think, oh, I can't do this, take a break, come back when you're more calm, level headed, and just casually try it and just but when you're annoyed and you're trying to learn, there's nothing worse when you're annoyed and you're trying to learn something because you just get
Because
more. Yeah.
you just don't you take it on board, but then at the same
Mm-hmm.
time your head goes, nah.
It's like
It just doesn't
it's like
listen
tunnel
as much.
vision. Your head just goes like you're angry. You're annoyed. Like I can't get this. Whereas if you're more calm, you're more collected. You can actually probably see what you're doing wrong.
Mm.
Um, but yeah. Anyway, so just to kind of round this off, the I want to kind of bring it back to just obviously you. So we did speak about what kind of got you into speedrunning, how long you've been doing it, runs you've done. What are you currently running? Is there any game that they're sort of focused on just now? Any one game?
Um, so a lot of my current plans as it stands right now, I do usually because I do the online events and in-person events. If I get into an online event,
Mm-hmm.
I usually start running that game over the course of like a week or 2 weeks before.
Yeah,
Sometimes even earlier than that because of the fact of it depends on how long it takes to de-rust. That's also another way of
yeah,
with speedrunning, you can de-rust games as well, which is why when people go away and they come back, you've seen as de-rusting
yeah.
and to get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it's currently driver three practice that I'm doing for my ESA run in a few
Cool.
weeks. But then after that, I think when I come back from ESA, because I've got in NSG and a few other events, I've got a relearn or de-rust. I think Treasure Planet, Destruction Derby 2, and things like that. In terms of what's on my actual list
Mm-hmm.
of games to run, there's one or two. One of them, I, there's one that I can't mention because I want to kind of keep that a secret
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
want
that's
to
fine.
kind of leave that be, hide that away in the
Yeah,
shadows,
of
so to
course not.
speak. But there are a few games that I do want to like. I don't want to like learn fully, but learn enough to do a run of.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's games that I've done in the past where I've done runs of them and they've been like improved strats or quicker ways of doing events now, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
okay, you don't need to do these races anymore, and you can skip them. So I'm looking at getting back into games like Burnout Legends for the PSP, and I think I keep saying that I want to do Burnout Dominator for a while. So,
Yeah.
things like that. Going back to what was it? Going back to like bizarrely enough, going into like MotoGP and stuff like that
Good.
because
Good.
there are leaderboards for them and Yeah, it's just to give them a try. I mean, two that I've recently tried, or one of them actually that I've tried,
Mm.
is Trials HD
Right.
for
Okay.
the Xbox 360.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the games that came after that, his sequel, was Trials Evolution.
Right. Okay.
And I've looked into that. I've not done any research other than it looks like a fun game, and I remember playing it and beating it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to learn them so I have something to submit for future UKSG events, but also ESA and other events on site. And even maybe even look into learning the rest of the Trials series because they have quite a fair few games in that series. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, should
That's
be good fun.
that's great, man. Um, Listen, I'd love to have you on all night. There's probably a million things. There's probably some things I've forgotten about that I wanted to kind of talk about or ask you about, but they've kind of escaped my mind. I think we have. I think we have kind of went over a lot of things. You know, obviously we spoke about events and obviously your origins, so to speak. What you're doing now, plans for the future, sort of thing.
I
Um,
think this is going to be longer than any other guest put together for the
yeah,
next two or three.
I think so. But as I said to you before, man, before we got into this, I said there's not really a time limit as such. Um, yeah, and I think we've kind of went over a lot of things. I just don't want it to kind of get circular. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's great. Just quickly again, just before we go, if you just want to remind everyone of your Twitch as well as where they can watch your preparations for ESA.
Yeah, so you can catch me over at ViperRaces
Mm-hmm.
on Twitch, and I have a YouTube channel which is under Viper Racing, not the 1998 PC game. It is the actual YouTube
The
channel.
YouTube channel.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's fine. Well, as I say, I'll link all your socials below. People can go check it out, and yeah, we'll go from there. Um, Thanks for watching, everyone. As I say, this is the first episode. I don't really have a name for the show yet, so I'll just put a placeholder in just now, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe someone can suggest a
Always
snappy,
speedrun chat.
yeah,
Done.
yeah,
Not easy. There you go. Short, snappy to the point.
yeah. Maybe someone can put in a snappy, more catchy title, but yeah, we'll go from there. I don't really, in terms of the show sort of upload schedule, I don't really have a schedule planned. I'll maybe try and get someone else on, maybe next month or so. I don't want to like do, you know, every week. Well, every week would be okay, I suppose, but we'll just see where it goes from there. But again, man, thanks for coming on, and again, thanks for being the first one, so to speak.
No problem.
Hopefully, won't be the last. Catch you soon, man.
No worries.